This really, I didn't choose this as my favorite item because it's too big of a news story, but really was the most delicious story of the week, which was Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin's
Woof.
failure to inform the president and the rest of the White House.
And do we know what his ailment was?
Oh, yeah.
What was his ailment?
I'll get there.
Okay.
Of his first, the fact that he underwent a surgical procedure for the treatment of prostate cancer. That was one, and he transferred his authority to his deputy, Kathleen Hicks. And number two, that a few days later, when that was over, he had a complication from that because, of course, you're always prone to infection if you have surgery, that landed him in the ICU, where he remains now at Walter Reed Hospital.
He's still in?
He's still there.
Oh, boy.
Okay, so Chris and I were chatting before this, and I was saying that if there is any lesson in how not to manage a crisis, it would be the Lloyd Austin playbook, because all of these details have dripped out. And what could have been, a 2-day news story, it's big enough news that it was going to be a big news story. They could have put this out in a single statement. But Of course, the person who didn't inform the White House that he was going to surgery or that he landed back in the ICU, of course, didn't have the staff with the wherewithal or the good judgment to issue a statement that would have put this to rest. No. The details of this have dripped out. First, Politico breaking the news that he underwent a surgical procedure and transferred his authority without informing the White House.
So Politico had the scoop?
Politico had the scoop. But then for 2 days or so, nobody knew, what happened? What was the procedure and why is he in the ICU? So that extended the story for a couple of more days. Then they find out it was for prostate cancer and he's still in the ICU. And John Kirby's briefing on it. And the defense, the spokesman for the Secretary of Defense is briefing on it. So the New York Times writes, "The extraordinary breach of protocol, Mr. Austin is in charge of the country's 1.4 million active duty military at a time when the wars in Gaza and Ukraine have dominated the American national security landscape, has baffled officials across the government, including at the Pentagon. Senior defense officials say Mr. Austin did not inform them until Thursday that he had been admitted to the intensive care unit at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center in Bethesda, Maryland. The Pentagon then informed the White House."
Wow.
So, textbook case of how not to manage a crisis.
Austin is 70, and he was considered to be a little on the senior side for the post. And they had to do the same thing that they did with Jim Mattis, which is get an exception, I believe, so that because you're not supposed to put retired military officers or people who have recently served in that position. That's the idea, is to reinforce the idea of a civilian military. You don't want to take people straight out of the military and put them in. So they got an exemption, and I'm sure that Austin felt, I forget what percentage of men over 70 have prostate cancer. It's like 3/4 or something.
And everyone gets it eventually,
right?
Basically.
Yes.
You live long enough.
You live long enough, you're going to have problems down there. And so I'm sure he didn't want the embarrassment of having a swimsuit area procedure, a bathing suit area procedure, and that would be embarrassing.
This is more embarrassing.
Well, and here's what I can't fathom. So, and this is like with Hunter Biden, too, and a lot of people. Joe Biden's got enough problems these days, right? If you want to see Joe Biden get reelected, dude has enough problems these days. The selfishness of Lloyd Austin here is pretty astonishing. And now, of course, Biden can't fire him while he's in the hospital, right? You can't can him. But I certainly hope that I'm sure Lloyd Austin's a good person. I certainly hope that he demonstrates that by when he's out of the hospital, that he retires, that he lets Biden off the hook on this, because this is a real Woof.
Well, the Washington Post, Josh Rogan, had a great column on this. And he says Austin's avoidable scandal was caused by hubris and mismanagement.
Say word.
And he writes, Austin's problematic actions and those of his senior staff go well beyond his failure to tell Hicks why she was assuming some of his duties and his failure to tell the White House he was in the intensive care unit. By the way, Kathleen Hicks was on vacation in Puerto Rico when she was
didn't
informed.
even tell her what it was about?
He did not tell her why she was assuming this. Austin also failed to disclose his diagnosis for several weeks, and the way this was handled constituted a breakdown in the United States' national security bureaucracy. Several other senators told me Tuesday they couldn't understand why Austin hid his health issues, and they promised to press for a full and public accounting. And Rogan adds, Austin was partially incapacitated while U.S. forces were conducting lethal operations against militia groups in Iraq and fending off attacks in Syria and the Red Sea. His deputy was on vacation in Puerto Rico. The president, national security advisor, and secretary of state didn't know where he was. The leaders of the House and Senate Armed Services Committees were also kept in the dark.
All right, here's our bet. Will, at our next recording, Lloyd Austin still be the United States Secretary of Defense?
I actually think he will be.
Then I'll take the no. I'm not.
Okay.
It's not a strong, but I'll take the no. I think that he'll do the right thing and step aside.
Why isn't Biden asking for his resignation?
Because he's in the ICU.
So what?
I'm gonna give Biden credit for being humane and not, and also from a political standpoint, you don't want it to appear like you've been stampeded.
I think this is a hit to Biden's credibility.
Totally.
And by the way, Rogan concludes, will Austin resign? Probably not. But his credibility and confidence in his leadership have taken huge hits. And I would add, he hit Joe Biden's credibility, because it looks like this guy can't keep his house in order, as have the credibility of his chief of staff and press secretary. They undermined the public's trust in the U.S. government and created a completely avoidable scandal for Biden at the worst possible time. You cannot embarrass your boss like this.
Austin will resign. The question is, will he do it this in the coming week? Will he do it? Will he drag out? And I don't think we have a Hunter Biden section here, but Hunter Biden's appearance at the House, was it Oversight or Judiciary? I forget which committee.
Oversight.
So he showed up at the House Oversight Committee. Nancy Mace, who has very much decided to become a preposterous person, accused him of white privilege and of having no testicles. And the smugness of Hunter Biden sitting in the front row as
flanked by Abby Lowell on one side, the Washington super lawyer, and his sugar daddy, Kevin Morris.
Yeah.
His major art purchaser.
Just an art lover.
Yeah.
Just a person who, just a patron of the arts.
Yeah.
It's what Republicans are doing with Hunter Biden is gross, right? It's like they're trying to score they're trying to use House oversight to score political points. Check. It's true that Hunter Biden doesn't have the decency to his father for all that he owes his father. And this is just something I've repeated often, but it bears repeating. All of the money that Hunter Biden made, all of the trips around the world, all of the art that he sold, all of that is trading on his father's accomplishments. That's all that is. And now when his father is in the fight of his life to try to retain the presidency, that Hunter Biden would go and do that is just, I know,
preposterous.
I know I should stop being shocked. And the hard part is it's good for Hunter Biden, right? It helps Hunter Biden's case, but it harms his father.
It's
and
preposterous.
It's just
and offensive.
It's a kind of selfishness that we
have come to expect from Hunter Biden.
But that still surprises, even in Washington, a place where solipsism reigns. It's surprising even here.